What's going on? Happy Monday. This is weird, isn't it? Hit the like button. Welcome back to the Combat Footage Show. I haven't been here on a Monday in a long time. But I told you that as time and schedule permitted, we were going to add days back to the stream. So we're here. And it's good to see you. Hit the like button. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know you guys are here wherever it is you are in the world. It's always amazing to see the community come together. We got quite a bit of footage to talk about tonight. And I'll talk about the structure of tonight's show here in just a minute. Hell yeah. It's not Friday. Every time I see the word Friday, who's that chick that did that song Friday, it's Friday. I cannot, it lives rent-free in my brain. Rent-free. Cannot get it out of there. Let's check in over here on the chat. Where's everybody chiming in from? Topeka, Kansas, what's going on? Australia, Laramie. You know, I used to think that was Laramine. You know, I had, I think it's Ram that sells the Laramie. And I had a Bighorn at one time. And I always thought that the Laramine or the Laramie model was the Laramine. I don't know. I was an adult before I figured that out. Maine, welcome in. Oklahoma, what's going on? Scotland. Oregon. What's up? Virginia. We got folks everywhere. New England. Joint Base Lewis McCord out there. What's going on, guys? All right, so let's get started for the night. It's Monday. Yeah, and we're not normally here on Mondays, or not for a long time. Historically, going way back to when we initially designed the live show. It was an idea. It was an idea for a long time before Russia invaded Ukraine. Funker and I were working through, really how we could connect better with the community, if you will, because for a long time, the Funker 530 team has been behind a curtain, if you will, just posting videos, posting footage. But what we wanted to do is there's a community aspect to that, veteran community. So we talked about doing a live show and, come in February, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we said, we just got to go. And I actually remember using my personal stream, like overlays and stuff for that, because we weren't ready logistically for it. I was using the same stream desk that I, kick back and play games on over there. Fast forward for a little bit, we were doing it 5 days a week, right? And in fact, early on, we were doing it every day. There was so much footage that was coming out, and it was so pertinent and important for everybody to stay in tune with it, to be pointed to the sources that we were going to use. But what that took away from is our ability as a small team to manage the actual infrastructure of the team, right? Of our mission and what we do, which is the app, the website, right? We started as a YouTube channel, but we grew up and became an adult and made our own platform because YouTube started telling us what we could and could not talk about here, which is fine. It's theirs. Discussing that, somebody complained on Twitter. And I absolutely love it. Twitter's free, by the way, which is amazing. It's so awesome. Somebody complained on Twitter. You complain all the time about, being censored, but you post this stuff. I'm not complaining about it. If we get removed from a social media platform, we get removed from it. We're talking about it. We're talking about the reasons that we have an app, the reasons that we have, that I direct you guys there quite often, because the footage that we post ultimately is politics, the more you think about it. Right. We try to avoid, quote, politics as much as possible, but war is politics. The outcomes of war are, political in nature. So we were doing it 5 days a week, but that took away from our ability to manage the infrastructure. So we spun it back down to 3 days. 3 days a week was sustainable for a little while, but as the website grew, as our partnership landscape grew, I had to spin us down to a single day a week. Well, a single day might have been too far because we now have the requisite time necessary to potentially bring back twice a week. And the design that I have in mind for that, this one is, tonight's stream is less structured than the Friday streams typically are. I've got my list of videos, but I want to spend this time chatting about the show and what my hopes are for it, what our hopes are for it. So the design is for us to bring back one day. And presently, that's going to be Monday. And what I have my mind wrapped around and how I intend to structure that is, here's what you missed over the weekend, right? Not everybody is able to stay in tune to the things that are happening top to bottom in the combat footage realm. And we feel like that's part of what we are supposed to be here to do. So Mondays will be very intently focused on, the biggest videos or the biggest pieces of footage that we saw over the weekend. Now, I've structured tonight's stream in a way that almost follows a map. We're actually going to use a map tonight and dive in a little bit more than we normally do. Starting on the far west of Zaporizhia and some of those changes that are taking place because the forward line of troops in Ukraine is starting to ebb and flow a little bit. There are gains that are happening, and we'll talk about those, right? We'll see those on footage. Right, we're tying everything back to the footage, not to just some statement from somebody. Now, as the Monday stream kind of changes and the structure, we look at that over time. We will be talking about conflicts, war zones, and use of force everywhere. For as it stands tonight, I really only have 99% Ukraine footage to cover. We'll see one piece of footage out of Sudan, but you're gonna have to wait for the very end of the stream for that. But anyway, that's the design, and that was a little bit of the thought process behind adding a day back to the stream. I didn't want to sign up for when we were going to do that because ultimately we needed to ensure that all of our primary bases are covered, which, like I said, is the app and the website, right? Ensuring that we are able to keep those things online via infrastructure, partnerships, etc., is always going to be our number one priority. Now, one more note about a lot of the footage that we found here. A lot of this stuff that we're going to look at tonight, of course, it's got a combat footage flavor to it, but some of it's just going to be contextual. There might not be contact in some of this footage. You hear it all the time. You see it in the chat. I can't tell what they're shooting at. First of all, combat footage and video in general is an imperfect lens. It's always going to be, right? You're really just seeing things from a two-dimensional perspective. It's a two-dimensional lens into a three-dimensional space, or multi-dimensional, however many dimensions you believe, the real world has. But some of this footage is not going to have any contact in it, but it's going to have geolocation available for it. So that might give us a little bit more context to the footage. Anyway, I'm not going to dive too far down into that. But again, it was pertinent and important for me to share some of the thought process behind these things, behind these changes to the show, because the last time we made a change, that didn't, I wasn't able, I suppose, to articulate the thought process behind those changes. So I'm going to do my best to communicate how we're structuring and changing the show going forward as often as possible. I get the questions over there, over here, on Twitter, in the VOD comments. Let's get started for the night, though. A bunch of support coming through. Troy, thank you for the $2. TTMD Billiards, thank you for the 10. Rangers lead the way. Scott Wright, thank you for the $1.64. Hey, Ronnie, happy birthday. Not my birthday. It's not my birthday. I see it in the chat all the time. Is it actually his birthday? No, it's not. It's absolutely not. Ironically, I was sitting on the couch with my wife the other night, and we were just poking around, looking at family birthdays and things, and I got interested in where mine fell. Well, mine falls on a Friday. Of course it does, and you'll never know. Let's get started for the night. First, I want to take us over to the deep state map. I want to talk about why we're going to primarily use the deep state map, because to be honest with you, there are other maps that I would rather use, but for tonight's purposes, I chose deep state specifically. Deep state does a pretty good job updating pretty rapidly. What it doesn't have is any layout of, you know, Ukrainian elements. One map that's out there that does that is military land. The problem logistically with using military land for what we're going to, you know, what we're hopefully going to do tonight is you can't go full screen with it. You know, it's, you know, there's just no way for it to be full screen the way this one is. We're going to start the night footage down here near Lobkove. Now, we talked about Lobkove on Friday. Deep State has this listed as something of a contested area, if you will. A lot of pro-Ukrainian accounts are announcing that it has been, quote, liberated. But there was an attempted breakthrough. We're going to see some Russian perspective footage here of that attempted breakthrough, specifically from War Gonzo. Primarily artillery, maybe some mines included in this as well. And it's from a pretty deep perspective, like far out. So it's kind of difficult to understand. But what you are seeing is a quote-unquote attempted breakthrough for Ukraine. That video is coming up for you guys now. I'm going to keep the sound off on this one. YouTube once again slapped us for Friday's stream on copyright. Out in the distance here, you got to look closely. You'll see a column of some kind moving left to right. Whoever's flying this drone has shaky hands. But like I said, we're also looking from really far away. It seems like they're using some form of a digital zoom here. Now, we know that Ukraine has at least made it into at least the edges of Lobkove. We watched the video of that on Friday. If you recall the 360 helmet-mounted cam. The blue armbands, the blue 100-mile-an-hour tape, whatever it was. What are we watching? We are watching a quote-unquote, according to... Let me put myself in the low right here. According to the original source of this, War Gonzo, this is an attempted breakthrough near Lobkove, which is, on the, I would say, on the far western edge of what is assumed to be the opening fires of this counteroffensive. Whether you want to call that shaping or really just probing, or the counteroffensive in and of itself. I think the only ones that truly know whether or not we are looking at the counteroffensive or if we are still looking at shaping fires, shaping maneuvers, is Ukraine, to be honest with you. That and whomever it is they're speaking with within NATO. I'm going to pull my face out of here, though. We prefer probing operations. Probing. West Ukraine, no, this is East Ukraine, but on the far western edge of Zaporizhzhia, sort of. I'll show you, I'll bring the map back up here in just a second. So you see dismounts behind that armored vehicle there. I got one more video from Lobkove that I wanted to show to you guys. This is once again Russian perspective footage of shelling of Ukrainian vehicles near Lobkove. Buttons don't want to work today. See a Humvee that just pulled out to the left there. What shirt is that, Ronnie? This shirt from Savtac is the Unity Sunset, I believe it's called. They only did a very short order of the blue one. There's a black one, I think, that's still for sale. So again, this is Russian shelling of Ukrainian vehicles near Lobkove. The footage that we're going to watch tonight, something to keep in mind, is primarily between the 10th and today. So you're looking at about the last 48 hours of footage. Drone operator doing some Tony Hawk Pro Skater moves there. All right, this one's coming to an end. So that's what I had for you guys that was published. You know, again, the structure of tonight's stream is really what hit the environment over the weekend. Since we'll have our Friday stream where we cover, you know, the things that came out during the week. Monday is really there so you can enjoy the weekend with family, to be quite honest with you. And hopefully, you know, I will have done my job, which is to try and collate some of this footage. You know, that way you're not tied to your Twitter. You're not tied to even the website. You know, I'd love for you guys to be visiting the website, checking in on it here and there, but spend time with your families. So let's shift, though. I want to go back to the deep state map. So we were in Lobkove. Now, when I said far west, Zaporizhia, where I'm really going with that is the far western edge of what could be considered, you know, the offensive front right now. So Lobkove is here, listed as presently a contested area. It wasn't as of Friday. We're going to be shifting to the right a little bit, and I'm going to do my best to pronounce this because I practiced. Novodanylivka. This is where we're going to be. Now, you guys know this area already. On Friday, there was some footage. Actually, I mean, throughout last week, there was footage that was published of a pretty large pileup. We're going to see a bunch of perspectives of that. Or, well, at least one new perspective of that today. Perspective from on the ground while that was happening. This is that same general area here. But we're going to flip the coin over from Russian shelling and take a look at Ukrainian shelling. Just waiting for my buttons to start working. There we go. Goodness. This is going to be footage of Ukrainian shelling hitting Russian positions somewhere near along the lead up. And I don't know how to pronounce this one as well as the last one, which was also pretty absolutely terrible. Robotyne. I'm not sure, guys. But I'll show you that on the map here in a second. Here is that footage. This is Ukrainian shelling of Russian positions. A question that gets asked quite often is why is Ukraine not shaping with fires at all? You know, these quote-unquote probing attacks or, you know, these breach attempts. Why is Ukraine not using artillery? They absolutely are. But, you know, once again, you're still looking at an area that is defended in quite a bit of depth. Robotyne. Yeah, that's what I said. Robotyne? Dr. Robotnik? Let's bring it up, and I'll show you the map. I'll show you the map on that lead up. Button. Here. That's what I'm trying to pronounce. Right there. But that lead up there. But we're going to see another one here. This is filmed from a Russian perspective, and purports to show quite a few of those advanced Western weapons that are destroyed on that lead up. Now, we're going to watch this for a bit, and then we're going to bring it back up and we're going to talk about it. Bring myself up here on the left. So there are a lot of claims that this is fake footage, if you will. A lot of folks sharing with us, and let's back up for a second. The more viral thing that went relative to this footage are just photos of this, first and foremost. The video didn't propagate as fast as the photos did. And when I initially encountered this footage, which was really in photo form, it was filled with, that's fake. It's got to be fake. You know, the vegetation looks weird, or this looks weird, that, you know. So what I decided to do is to post this video, because those photos are ultimately screenshots from this video. The claims that this is fake include things like the smoke here at the beginning not moving or impacting the vegetation over here on the far left. I don't know which pixel you guys are specifically talking about, it not moving, but I don't find that to be an indicator. I also have absolutely no reason to believe that this footage is fake. Some have shared that it could possibly be AI generated. I can't call it one way or another, but to me, there are no indicators that this footage is fake. Looks like war to me, yes. Now, what's actually, I think, pertinent for us to talk about is what vehicles are we looking at here? Now, you've got Leopards, at least 2, and I believe up to 5. Some of which include mine rollers. So you can see that these up front appear to be Leopards with mine rollers. This one as well. But on the far right here, you have a Bergenpanzer. And there are MaxxPros and Bradleys in the back as well. You think the mine rollers are T-55s? If you look pretty closely, I mean, one of them might be an older tank here. But the features on this tank, which, you know, again, we're staring at pixels at this point, and it is not high-resolution imagery. Let's just put it that way. It's better resolution than some of the stuff that comes out. There's just, regardless, there are Leopards in this grouping of vehicles. And just like we talked about Friday, this is what's going to happen in a combined arms breach. It is. We'll see some footage of Ukrainian air working here in a little bit. Something you don't see a lot of, but Ukrainian air is at least trying to operate in the area. There is an attempt to make this a combined arms breach in the most traditional of the sense, which is a very, very complex operation. Right, you are going to have lead vehicles like this that are charging into, you know, direct and indirect fire into minefields. It's going to create funnels, and Russia has created corridors that force the Ukrainians into certain areas. So these types of losses are absolutely expected, never planned for. You know, because again, you see that narrative right now, or that theme. Is Ukraine planned for this? You don't plan for just losing vehicles. Like, that's not how it works. You know, losing vehicles, taking casualties is a risk. And then you attempt to mitigate that risk so that it is at an acceptable level. Now, we're going to see some footage in a little bit. And some of the same things apply here that apply to the last time we talked about one of these breach attempts. You don't see bodies. You don't see any bodies laying around. Something that is clear and evident is these vehicles are protecting their crews. And we're going to see evidence of that here in a minute. Again, tying everything back to footage. Now, I've got some more footage coming from that area. This one I would consider somewhat not safe for work. So just to pull the map back up, and I'm going to pull the map back up each time. I'm going to bring the map up here so you can see where we are. Here's our area. I would consider this next one, somewhat not safe for work. Discretion a little bit advised here, not necessarily because there's any gore. Just be advised. Coming up. So what you're looking at is a Ukrainian FPV drone. Yeah, I'd consider that one just a discretion advised kind of thing. And I never really know how to describe it because it's not that it's not safe for work, right? I don't know what you do for work. I don't know. That's why I tend to use just discretion advised, where you're about to seize, war, if you will. One more video from that area. We're going to see some Ukrainian artillery working on Russian vehicles here. It's about a 2-minute video. Coming up now. Same area. Same area. We haven't shifted areas yet. That's definitely copywritten. Turn our own music on. I'll leave it all off. Edgy American, thanks for the $2. Happy birthday. Not my birthday, but I appreciate the $2. Scott for $2. Patrick for 10. Craig for 10. Al, thank you for 556. Damn, thank you for 5. Austin for 5. You help me get through the workday, and it's only right you get a shave. A share. Oh, thank you for that, Austin. I've been waiting for somebody to make fun of my baby face. Again, what you're watching here is Ukrainian artillery working against Russian tanks. I already made fun of your face earlier in the chat. Battle Chemist said, you just missed it, Ronnie. I'll put your ass in timeout, Battle Chemist. Ronnie, what's the word on the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant? So we talked about that a little bit on Friday. And my understanding, which I am not an atomic energy expert whatsoever, but the IAEA, whom are, don't believe that there's any immediate risk to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Largely because in their statement, their official statement that ISW reported was that the cooling pool was sufficient to supply the nuclear power plant with enough water for months. Now, words matter to me, and they said months. What happens at the end of months if the water levels don't stabilize, I'm not certain. But from an immediate risk perspective, it is mitigated. So that's what I had for you guys near Novodanylivka. I can pronounce that one better than the other one, the one that started with an R. All right, let's move forward, though. I'm doing my best. I'm learning, guys. I'm learning. We're going to shift a little bit to the right to Storozheva. Show that for you guys on the map. This is another one of those areas that has actually had a lot of footage, and I'm actually going to pull up a resource that I showed you guys on Friday. I'm going to show you a way that you can do this without ever having to worry about my stupid face. But I'll be pulling that up here in a second. This gray area, just to kind of go back to some of the colors, if you will. Any of these gray areas, Deep State considers contested. There are certain maps that are out there that have this gray area as newly held ground. Anywhere that's blue is newly taken ground by Ukraine. If it's green, that means that it was already previously taken by Ukraine, but prior to that was held by Russia. So if it's green, that means that Russia once held those locations, and Ukraine now does, but they took it back prior to the current state, if you will. I don't know how far back that goes, but some of these are pretty old. 2022, soldiers from the 98th took that area. Okay. So let's take a look at some of that footage. I clicked on the wrong thing here. This first one. I didn't mean to laugh. At the beginning of this video is funny. It is what it is, man. Like, it's the beginning of it's funny. I mean, take it or leave it. Coming up for you guys now. What you're going to see here is Ukrainian actions taking that area. Includes taking Russian POWs. It includes destroying Russian equipment. But it has been geolocated to that point. That's what I'm trying to do with the map, is show footage that has been geolocated using whom I would love to be friends with, geo-confirmed. I think those guys are awesome, and their work absolutely helps us here at Funker 530. Here's that footage, and we have two perspectives of this. One more time. Now, if you weren't paying attention, as that thing pulled off, one of the dismounts riding on the top fell off of it. And it just might have been the thing that saved his life. Because that armored vehicle is not long for this world. So this is Ukrainian perspective footage, and we're watching a Russian armored vehicle. Yes, he was involuntarily dismounted. These are some of those POWs. Should have given you a discretion with this one. There are deceased laying around. Different vehicle? Yes, this is a different vehicle. Correct. Is that a tank? Correct. Yes. All right, let's come up. Actually, we're not even going to come up. I'm gonna shamelessly plug our Twitter here. Some of this footage I'm also sharing to our Twitter. We actually shared quite a bit of it. I wanted to show you guys a second perspective of some of that, though. That's coming up for you now. Oops. Show unbiased footage. You should have been here at the start of formation, and you would have caught other footage. Not my problem, you're late. And there it went. And there he goes. Okay, let's bring it up. Now, again, just to take you guys back to the map and what we were just looking at there. Coming up now. This area over the weekend was kind of a hotbed of activity, of footage to come out. And, you know, like I promised you, I wanted to, for those that weren't here with us on Friday, I wanted to take you to one more resource, one that I talked about on Friday. Stand by and let me get that pulled up for you. Talk amongst yourselves. Coming up now. GeoConfirmed. Right. Their Twitter is excellent. A lot like Oryx, using video and photos to validate things, to validate statements, if you will. Here is GeoConfirmed, showing that area. And you can see since the 3rd of June, there is a lot of activity here. And each one of these is clickable, and you can follow through with. So these folks are doing excellent work. Well, we're going to scale up to the 10th here. And the majority of this was covered in those two videos. So when there is some form of a video cut, if you will, not each one of those is a new video. When there is some form of a video cut that shows multiple locations, it'll still link back to the same video, if you will. But that is what we were just watching. This activity here. Let's come up. Retley, thank you very much for the 5. Can you confirm it's a good source of information? Very good. Yeah, big fan of theirs. I use it mostly to validate what we're finding. You know, we still use Telegram as our primary, and you know, I'll peruse their Twitter feed and I'll peruse their site in the areas that the original poster is claiming that it comes from, because we have found a couple that didn't necessarily match. You know, with GeoConfirmed's links to, you know, the individual that geolocated it, if you will. But I've been using it for a few weeks now, and I think it's awesome. Jester, thank you very much for the $5. Appreciate it very much. In what manner do you see Putin accepting defeat? I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his ultimate, you know, red line or allowable terms would be, because his terms that he's put forward to Ukraine that Ukraine has not accepted are, you know, we'll come to the negotiating table with you as long as, you know, you don't join NATO, you don't join the EU, and you respect the annexed territories. From a certain perspective, I can almost see Ukraine accepting the not joining NATO and not joining EU, but not ever accepting the annexed territories. That being said, I have no idea what Ukraine's thinking either. One way or another, peace needs to find its way. It just has to be on Ukraine's terms. That's it. You know, we talked about a theme that is still propagating, that the United States barred or blocked negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. And that's absolutely not the case. What we did block is Russia trying to negotiate with the United States. The United States said, we're happy to help facilitate negotiations, but they have to include Ukraine. Russia was not speaking to Ukraine and would not. They wanted to negotiate with the West, not Ukraine. One more video from Storozheva. That's how I'd look at that. But again, you know, I could be missing something, as is always the case. This is Russian perspective footage tracking vehicles in that area and using, I believe, artillery to strike those vehicles.
Потом назовут донбасскими панфиловцами. Мы покажем эксклюзивные кадры тех горячих дней и расскажем в хронологическом порядке, как все происходило. 5 июня. Ночь с воскресенья на понедельник. Личный состав частей, стоящих на Великоновоселовском направлении, уже несколько недель ожидает наступления украинских войск. Приблизительно в 3 утра по московскому времени расчет беспилотной разведки «Барс-Каскад» замечает движение техники в зоне своей ответственности. Проследив за передвижением противника, становится ясно, в районе населенного пункта Шахтерская формируется колонна для дальнейшего перемещения к линии боевого соприкосновения. Около 4 утра колонна противника, состоящая более чем из 40 единиц бронетехники, выдвигается в сторону населенного пункта Золотая Нива, чтобы начать штурм наших позиций. Враг многократно превосходит нас по количеству техники и личного состава. Но к этому времени наши разведчики уже передали информацию артиллеристам, а те встретили передовой разведывательный отряд противника плотным артиллерийским огнем. Прощупать нашу оборону и выявить огневые точки под плотным огнем артиллерии.
Thank you, mister. I see it.
И он отправляет в бой свои
основные
силы, пытаясь маневром отрезать Новодонецкое от населенных пунктов Благодатная и Новоселовка. Но на их пути оказываются позиции ОБТФ «Каскад», давно ожидающие противника в ближайшей лесополосе. Завязывается 3-часовой бой. Каскадеры отбивают одну атаку за другой. Наша артиллерия поливает врага дождем из снарядов. Противник пытается обойти позиции.
Why did they put a weird filter? I think it's just shitty equipment. You know, I have no idea. You know, but if I had to bet, it's just shitty equipment.
Не понеся серьезные потери, неонацисты вынуждены бежать, бросив технику. В это же время, западнее Новодонецкого, ситуация развивается аналогичным образом. Бронетехника противника упирается в лесополосу, где находились наши передовые позиции. В ходе кровопролития...
We're going to start getting into some pretty high op-tempo stuff here. I probably should have led with it, but I wanted to go from left to right. I don't know why. My brain just wanted to take us, you know, from the left near Lobkove all the way up to the right. We're going to see footage from the flanks of Bakhmut tonight. I think more or less, you know, and again, we're only really looking at the last 24 hours, and we're also not going to encapsulate everything that's been out in the environment. But I did want to capture, you know, certain things, especially from Zaporizhia in the south, to kind of that's where a lot of eyes are at the moment, if you will. But again, we'll see footage from the outskirts of Bakhmut where there are quite a few gains on Ukraine's part taking place there. We're going to shift to the right a little bit on the map towards Novodonetsk. So let's bring the map back up here. Take a look at Novodonetsk. There we go. It's very, very short shift. And here's one of the things that I love about Deep State, is you can measure. So we were just here. Hello? Screwed it up. About 13 kilometers to the east. Bring it back up. Footage is coming up for you now. This is, once again, Russian perspective footage. And if I'm not mistaken, this one is... No. So this is going to be quite a bit of Lancet footage. There's a lot of Lancet footage. You know, there's some pretty big accounts that are sharing that around as some kind of an indicator for the overarching success of, you know, whatever you want to label this counteroffensive. But there's a lot of that has hit the wire over the last 48 hours or so. This is essentially a compilation of Lancet footage hitting Ukrainian vehicles in Novodonetsk. Here you are. Buffering. Let's try that again. Keeping the sound off. That blew my ears out. John B., thank you for the $10. Thanks for doing this. Of course. Thanks for being here for it. Tyler, thanks for hitting the member button. Charles, thank you for the $5. Troy for $20. Wow. Steve, thank you for the $2. Second round of the one chip challenge. Absolutely not. I'll never do that again. I like spicy food, but I'll never do the one chip thing again. You're going to make me say your name, aren't you? Thought Slayer. Thank you for the $10. Happy birthday. I started watching some coverage by certain Polish media. Knowing Russian language, I chuckle at wrong translation of certain F slurs. Is it political choice based on Western audience? I'm not sure kind of what you're getting at. Are you saying that they purposefully don't directly translate the F word, or that they change it in some way? There are those that still believe that, you know, saying the F word is like unprofessional. I am not one of those people. Now, this is just going to be stats for, you know, a couple seconds here of the Mastiff. Keep fast forwarding. Here's another hit. And as far as the one chip challenge, that's on one of my other channels. And it's an old one too. It would have been, you know, about a year and a half ago at this point. All right, let's bring it up. That's what I had from Novodonetsk. And it was really a small grouping. Here, let me pull that up on GeoConfirmed and show you. It's that one? Yeah. This is Novodonetsk. Very small little town there. But Ukraine had at least gotten that far to get hit. 131st Regiment of the Donetsk People's Republic on Russia's side there. Stop. Let's shift a little bit to the right, near Nevelske. And this is going to be just southwest of Avdiivka. It's coming up for you now. Well, the map is, just to give you a little bit of context there. Once again, another unconfirmed or unknown status area here, the gray, if you will. But this is one of those, it's a little bit longer of a video, but we're going to watch it all. We're going to see some direct action here. This is going to be the 59th Motorized Infantry assaulting a Russian trench using Humvees from a fire support perspective. It's a pretty wild footage. Now, most of what we're finding for this video out in the wild has had music overlaid over it. We found one that didn't have any, if you will, and it's about a 7 to 8 minute long video, but it takes you through the entirety of, the lead up to the assault. You'll see the 50s firing. You'll see the Ukrainians take the trench. You'll see Russia attempt to leave from the trench, and as they leave, Ukrainians exploit that withdrawal. Coming up for you now. There is no audio, though. And I guess this one doesn't have the drive-in, which just adds another 10 seconds or so. Tyler, thank you for the 2. Let me just make sure I'm maximizing what video quality we have for this one. Nope. There we go. That's better. So you got a Russian here. He's going to, you know, fire off some rounds, drop his rifle, and then take off down the trench line there. These are Ukrainians on your right. Now, some of you might not know that this is Yuri's team. The war machine himself. Is that too far out for a grenade? No, you're going to start to see grenades exchanged here in just a second. If we haven't already, I was paying attention to the chat. We just had a grenade go over from here. I think that lands. It's pretty far, I guess. I mean, Pokeballs. Now, what's really interesting about this one, one of our new team members, I want to say Cam posted this one. I'll confirm that at the end. We have our first officer of the team. Cam is a Marine officer and absolutely threatens Josh because Josh is not a Marine officer. But I want to say Cam wrote this one up, and his write-up was excellent. What interested me is seeing the maneuver here. Right, so you had one team that pushed up on the right side. You have, this team moving up the center, and then you have this team moving around the far left flank. Josh, not an officer? No way. Bit of a video cut there. So now what we have is we have 3 Russians that have kind of made their way out from this area that has top cover in the back. Drone watching the field from above is such a massive advantage. Luca, you are not wrong. The economy of scale relative to the capability increase there is just so huge. You know, a lot of people talk about drone dropped munitions, but the real novelty in the use of drones is from a mission command perspective. So as an intelligence asset, as a command and control asset, you know, and you don't need some over R&D, Defense Department contracted UAV. These are $600, $700, $800 drones, providing a massive advantage to both sides. I mean, Russia's using these, to the same advantage. And, the only thing that I can hope is that these lessons are being written down by somebody sitting in the Pentagon. At the end, can you tell me where they're getting shot from? Yep. So you got Ukrainians here along this trench line that they just assaulted using Humvees as their base. Then up here in the top side, towards this back portion of the trench, you have a team of 3 Russians. Mellow Yellow, thanks for the $2. Why do they use such pinky grenades? What do you mean? I would be willing to bet those are just RGDs. You know? KG, thanks for the $10. Unconfirmed, but cool as heck. If true, new Striker and Bradley armored vehicles will be provided to Ukraine to replace those lost. I haven't read that report. So, and what you mean by new Striker and Bradley armored vehicles is interesting to me. Do you mean a newer model or do you mean more? Tyler, thank you for the $2. Love the content and how you go about it. Thank you very much for that. So the Ukrainians are starting to, inch ever closer to these Russians that are in the back part of this trench here. Hey, Beaver. There goes a grenade. So the Russians are now, withdrawing, and the Ukrainians are about to exploit that withdrawal. See small arms. If you look close enough, you'll see the impacts of that small arms all around them. Why do I need better internet? It's not my internet. All right, let's come up. Push the button. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Stream Deck. I might need to replace that. So that's what I had for that Avdiivka area. That more specifically was Nevelske. Let's pull the map back up so you can see where we were. Then you'll see where we're headed, because we're headed to Bakhmut. So this is where we were, in this general area here, just to the southwest of Avdiivka. It's pretty close. What's the distance there? About 15 kilometers. Now, though, we're going to head to Bakhmut. We're going to start on the southern flanks of Bakhmut, where Ukraine continues to take ground back. We're going to start here with the 3rd Assault Brigade and a small counterattack, small being relative, of course, that they have been working on. I want to say it's Bilahova counterattack. It's a series of videos that we're going to see here, each of which are about 1.5 minutes long to 2 minutes, that kind of walk us through the process all the way up to, once again, using footage, walking us all the way up to a Russian withdrawal back across the, I want to say it's the Donbass Canal. The very first of those videos, just make sure I have the right one. I don't. The very first of those videos is coming up now. This one's a little dry, but it is essentially them laying their base of fire before the assault.
Плюс, працюємо з РПГ.
Прикриваємо. Заходь, підарас!
Здавайся, підар!
Жить будеш! Поїдеш на концерт групи Любе! Або до Кобзона! Гондон,
Беркут, стреляю.
Плюс, давай, прикриваємо.
Беркут, Парижу. 1-200, 1-200, один із цих двох 200, ви його со стрілкатні сняли, 1-200, один аж іще тимчасово живий.
Плюс.
Волосів вообще чітко, прямо туди, куди надо.
Ти кидав, тренер? Двох кидав? О, бика зриває.
Ой-ой-ой-ой-ой! Вообще чітко.
підарас! А, ти
Пацани, з нього броня злітає. Походу ви йдемо за 200-го, походу вже 2-200.
Хорош.
Пацани, оцей, який ще рухався, походу він уже не
Все,
рухається.
все, хорош.
Зараз ми ще по ним наблюдаємо, походу він уже все.
That's about the end of that one. But again, it's a series of videos that we're going to be watching here. And here is the first part of that assault that takes place.
Бля, нас уже бачать. Дивись, у нас ще в посадці 2 розтяжки і 2 монки.
Плюс разминовывайте. Видимо, что-то не получилось.
Що взірвалось? Що там?
Это я ломку снял вот сейчас.
Оце в'їбала монка?
Да.
Да?
50-я. Она стояла вот так вот.
Ти що, єбать ти йобнутий нахуй.
Що?
Ти нахуй, чи ти не сказав?
Бля, я сказал, ёпта.
Да, сейчас. Ну, видишь, что-то разрывает. И подальше иди.
Що, пробуємо витягнутися, насипати всередину нахуй, там де пулеметчик. І пробуємо, блядь, перебіжками їбашить.
Не зашли, тут.
Давіть! Давіть ПКМом, давіть! Газ, газ! Газ, хуярь! Ого. Це що було, братан?
Ты до ремонта ебашут внутри посадки.
Підаремонки їбашуть внутрі посадки.
Дацик, перед вами 10 метрів окопна лінія. Закидайте гранати.
Братан, надо, щоб ви в посадку теж ниряли.
All right, let's bring it up and we'll take a look at the next part of that assault. It's Bila Hora. Coming up for you now.
Тут на зв'язку. Прикричали.
Заходим, заходим.
Так, і один на зв'язку.
Дай, треба забрати документи. Він ще й походу всрався.
The audio going out is Not on my side, guys. Let me try to refresh the feed here. See if that fixes it.
Ебуча вертушка, нахуй.
No. Well, it did, but it's a different video. Stand by. Coming up now. Yeah. Maybe it's Twitter. Maybe Twitter's having a problem right now. Because all my other sites are loading just fine. Stand by, guys. Sorry for the delay here. Trying to get it up. It's genetic. Nothing I can do about it. I don't hear it, but we'll watch it without the without sound. I'm not sure if that's a part of the original video either. I don't remember it being part of it. I think audio is trimmed for OPSEC. Interesting. Bring back up here. So that is the majority of that counteroffensive that we see from the perspective of the assault team, if you will. And more specifically, that is, I want to say, the 3rd Assault Brigade. Stop playing. Stop playing. But there's one more piece to that I wanted to show you guys. I want to note for this that I did not put this music here. It's already there. What you're going to see are Russians retreating from that area. Presumably between the video that we just watched and the video we're seeing now, the assault continues. We will see some supportive fires, whether it's from mortars or artillery, I'm not sure. But this is where Russia then, or these Russians, then retreat across the Donbas Canal. You know, it's terrible because the context to show you that the assault resulted in a withdrawal is critical. Let me show you all that on the map here. Stay by. I'm pulling the map up. I just want to, yeah. Here. So there's a canal in here, okay? Where are we at? The canal's kind of hard to see on the deep state map. Let's go with the geo-confirmed map really quick, because the geo-confirmed map actually shows the canal to help you understand what's happening there. It's Avdiivka. Bakhmut. There's Bakhmut. Let me bring you in here. There you go. So, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this specifically is the video. So this canal, as they move back across that canal towards more advantageous positions. All right, let's shift to the... Actually, we're going to stay right there. So this one I would consider to be a little bit not safe for work. Discretion advised. However you would like me to explain that to you. Whatever. But there's going to be at least an injury here. Now, this is the same team attempting to liberate a World War II era Mosin from a trench line when one of the assault team receives fragmentation from a frag grenade. Coming up for you now.
Запригуйте, запригуйте. Це бліндаж? Нормально?
Оп, аккуратно міни.
Заход, заход.
Міни вухо стріляв.
Сорі, брат.
Та не ти.
Чисто. Йдемо далі. Бистро, 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 пацани. Хорошо. Сидіть, 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 я забіжу. Нема ніхуя, пацани. Єсть? Нормально? Це наша чи чужа? Зараз я їм в ответ кину.
Вони?
Не знаю. Задор, задор, зв'язок! Я 300, пацани!
He's yelling that he's injured. He's going to apply a tourniquet on his arm. Should have given you a discretion there. I did, actually. Excuse me.
Здорово, долбойоб. Прийняв інфу, продовжуємо зачистку.
They have secured the Mosin. Let's bring it up. These dead soldiers are Ukraine or Russia? They were Russians. Yeah, we were watching this from a perspective of Ukrainians. Now, on that northern flank of Bakhmut, we're going to shift up into that. I'm going to say the northern flank. Let me show you kind of the current mapping situation there near Bergenpanzer. So, if reports are to be believed, Ukraine still is attempting at least some measure of push into Bakhmut proper, at least into the outskirts there, but they are being repelled. Most of their gains are presently to the north and to the south. We just spent some time in the south. Now we're going to shift to the north. This video is just going to be Ukrainian shelling. And again, I'm just showing what has been published in the last 48 hours or so. So there's other footage that might provide additional context. But over time, as time goes on, these will begin to tell a better story of what's happening on the ground based on footage as it aligns with its geographic location. I am attempting to make this a little bit more value driven, especially the Monday stream. The Friday stream, we talk about the top 10 on the website, but Monday, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit more focused on, making sure you understand exactly where this is taking place, where each of these videos is taking place, where I'm able to. There's going to be some footage in a little bit that I'm not going to be able to do that. Here's that Ukrainian artillery working on that northern edge of Bakhmut. I'm not sure what's going on with that music. I'm going to turn that off. No, you need to watch Patrick Lancaster. I don't need to do anything. But thanks. Thought Bakhmut had no strategic importance. Oh, I didn't say it did. All right, let's bring it up. So that's what I had from the that northern flank of Bakhmut. We're not done with footage though. We've actually got quite a bit of it. And some of this stuff is going to be difficult to watch, just like the footage that we've been watching. If you were here enough, or here early enough for it, it's going to be both perspectives, if you will. Again, you know, sometimes this stream or the show tends to fall into how Ronnie feels about the situation. I don't like doing that. I like just showing you the footage, right? That's why I'm inclined to think that these Monday streams, from a value perspective, from a context perspective, are just going to be that much better. I still want us to do the top 10 stuff because that shows you what everybody else is watching, what's going viral. It's also going to be inclusive of other conflicts, other use of force scenarios and situations throughout the world. And I think that stuff's important to take in as well. You know, we will also be including some of that stuff where pertinent and relevant. This is not the Ukraine show. The world presently, the combat footage world even more, is, from an information environment perspective, dominated by footage of the war in Ukraine, largely because of the gravity of it. I want to shift to a question that we get a lot about air. Now, both the first of these is going to take place somewhere down in the south near Zaporizhia, and it is Ukrainian air that is absolutely still operating. We're going to flip the coin over and see an RT-produced video of Russian air operating as well. The skies remain contested. Copyrighted music, keeping that off. But one of the things that I find super interesting here, right? These are Ukrainian. I want to say I know one's a MiG and the other one's a Su. I just don't know which nomenclature. Stand by. Su-25 and MiG-29s. Coming back up. Once the button works. Thank you, button. So one of the things that interests me very much here is that same lofted rocket technique, right, that you see with choppers still being used by, fixed-wing aircraft. The overarching purpose to that is self-preservation of the platform. Now, we've seen the impact area of these, more specifically from a chopper, though. These are flying pretty low. You know, they're not up at that, tens of thousands of feet. And it's a pretty wide impact area that it hits. So from an area denial perspective, it might be, maybe from a morale impact perspective. But you're definitely not getting any kind of CEP out of that. These are unguided rockets being fired that way. And it's all, these are all different salvos, as far as I understand. Let's watch a very high production video coming from RT on Russian air. Again, dependent upon which time you come into the stream, we might be looking at a Ukrainian video or we might be looking at a Russian video. I don't know what to tell you. Here you are. Let me start that back over. I'm going to turn it off. All right, let's bring it up. So I just wanted to show you, you know, something that RT published recently, because we do follow it, we do track it. You know, from a value perspective, you don't get a whole lot out of that. I have no idea contextually where that took place. I don't know if it was even in Ukraine, right? This is the kind of stuff that we don't publish, right? What's the purpose of publishing this? Outside of just knowing that Russia has airplanes. I don't have any. Now, if it was released with some level of context that said, you know, this is taking place in the south, we publish it. It goes live. I've got one here that shows some shaping fires from Ukraine. Deeper in the south of Zaporizhia. Let me show you where exactly I'm talking about here. And it's not deep per se in the south, but it's not really on the front lines. Now, reportedly, it is a supply convoy. Map's coming up for you now. Reportedly, it's a supply convoy somewhere down in this area. But it is artillery striking a relatively large column of Russian vehicles. All of this being published within the last 48 hours. How long have you been live? We've been live for about an hour and 23 minutes, 25 seconds. Okay, let's bring that back up. So we're, you know, like I mentioned, we're really moving off of the map now, if you will. Some of this I still know its location, but there's a follow-up to a video from last week. This video just continues to get shared around as, you know, some level of justification of how the counteroffensive is going. And to be honest with you, if you asked me to look at this as objectively as possible, this is an opinion moment. I try to avoid them as often as possible. But if you asked me to look at this as objectively as possible, I think Ukraine has taken more losses than they expected to. However, they still expected to take losses, and losses in a combined arms breach against a fortified position should be expected. Now, on the flip side of that coin, you'll have the conflicting arguments, or I shouldn't say conflicting arguments, the opposite argument, which is that the last 72 to however many hours have indicated that the entirety of it has been a complete failure. You guys remember the video and the situation in Zaporizhia near Orikhiv, which we can pull up here in a second. Here. That showed the first glimpses of Bradleys and Leopards being destroyed. It continues to be shared around, you know. It is a success for Russia in the information space, right? One of the things that we talked about way back was an overt attempt of Russia to destroy anything and everything Western, because what that does is provide that value in the information space, regardless of its ultimate value from a strategic perspective or a tactical value. Anyway, the footage that we're about to watch now is additional footage of that, but it's from on the ground in a Ukrainian perspective. Some really interesting footage to watch here. Because, like I guessed on Friday, one of the things I mentioned was I don't see any bodies. I don't see, you know, that's not to say there weren't casualties or even deaths, KIA of some kind. But I suspected that these vehicles did their job. which is protected their crews. This is evidence of that. The irony about this is it was published by a Russian source. You know, one of the common themes that I've seen over and over again is Bradley is aluminum. It's not going to hold up. Well, these Bradley crews are alive. That platform protected its crew. Not to say that, you know, it's 100% no casualties, because we don't have that information. But at a minimum, a large amount of these crews survived that. I tried finding a version that hadn't been edited with, you know, whatever that music is. They uploaded this video in order to raise funds. All right. Let's pause that and move up. This next one is going to be another Ukrainian perspective video, but not from the perspective you might think. What we're going to see here is a Russian armored personnel carrier somewhere in Zaporizhia that hits a mine, and it's kind of horrifying. Now I'm going to play the music on this one. It's going to get me a copyright claim, but I'll try and what'll end up happening for those that are watching the VOD is I'll have to mute that. In order for YouTube to not have the copyright claim listed anymore. You are. More time of that strike. And if you watch closely here, you can actually see it hit a bump just before the strike. As it backs up here, off of its beaten path, right? You can see that this is a path that's been used or taken already once. Another notable there is the fire internal. See that? Now, most Western vehicles have. I'm not great with you know, Soviet era platforms, but most Western vehicles have fire suppression systems. I'm not sure what the Soviet system or how good it is, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Under most circumstances, we turned ours off because it would randomly just go off. Right, the Humvee that I drove over the weekend turned it off. It's off. It's been off, but it's off. Okay. Another Ukrainian perspective video. Would consider this one discretion advised. War happens in this one. Ukrainian dismounts riding on top of some form of an armored personnel carrier. Don't have a great location for it. Take fire and get hit. A little bit of blood. Not a lot. It's not arterial. It's not spraying. It's kind of dripping, if you will. It's coming up for you now. About 2-minute video.
Давай далі, чи що? Чи вйобуємо, чи що, бо щас пизда буде?
If I misspoke on that last one, the last one was a Ukrainian perspective video. So, excuse me. Sorry about that. Those were Ukrainians that hit a Russian mine.
Я 300, ебать, десь ззаді теж нахуй. Вроді.
Давайте, парні, допомогу.
Нічого, 300.
Хуй.
Не знаю,
Затяни мені. Бобі, затяни мені руку, мене лохать.
що сказали? Давай.
Давай, хай прийом.
Що в тебе з Бобі з рукою?
Руку в'їбало, я чую як...
Треба налажувати.
Не знаю, хвост в'їбало. Я чую як по сраці в мене десь кров тече.
Давайте, блядь, хто не трохи
Ви на коробочці рухаєте? Плюс, давайте називайте. На прийомі.
That's just about it. That's about it for this one. Let's bring it up. DC Williams, thank you for $100. That's a lot of dollars, man. And thank you very much for it. You know, I'll say this kind of over and over again, guys. Thank you for sending in a few dollars here and there. Absolutely do not have to do that. The stream is free. It will always be free. And I wish I was a little bit more eloquent in thanking you. I just don't have better words. I've got 2 more videos to watch, though. And thank you again, DC. I am not entirely sure what these are, but I am going to need one of these, like, now. Video's coming up for you here. And if you guys can point me to where I can beg for one, I appreciate you. I like to think it's the Razor Recon Edition. Autobots, roll out. That thing's dope. I don't care who you are. That thing's awesome. I don't give it. I could not give a shit if we were watching Russians use it or Ukrainians use it. I want that. I don't care. I do not care. Anyway. Silent but deadly. Well, guys, that's it for the first Monday stream we've had in a while. I got one more video to watch, but you know where you're going to get it. You're going to get it at the very end once we transition over to the other stream where I'm going to kick back and hang out with you guys. And I hope you'll swing by because we're raising money for veteran charity over there. The Monday streams, like I said, are meant to just really try and dive a little bit further down into the context, whether it be via map or just other contexts that we're able to find, and provide a little bit more value in the show, right? I'm always about self-improvement, and we at the team are always improving everything that we do, whether it be the app, you know, and thank you guys for continuing to download and watch videos on that. We're continuing having to upgrade infrastructure, whether it be on the app or here on the Combat Footage Show. Everything is a work in progress. Nothing's done. And I appreciate you being a part of it. We all do. But I'm out of here. And we'll see you guys next time on Friday at 6 o'clock for the Top 10 show with a little bit more of what we're seeing from on the ground throughout the week. If you want to stick around, I'll see you in a couple minutes over there. All right. This last one, we're going to be releasing some classified footage here of a new machine gun technique coming out of Sudan. Josh calls this the MEPS machine gun walk, and I leave you with it. Good night, and stay informed. Is that hop, fuzzy bunny, hop rather than run, fuzzy bunny, run? We'll see you on the other stream. Good night, everybody.